We exist in a culture where social media perception is more important than ever to companies and to individuals. It's something that can drive millions of new people to products, services, activities, and events, and it's now a clear focus of any brand that it is one of the most powerful marketing tools at their disposal. Yet, it's a double-edged sword, for while you might get a swathe of new customers with well-placed promotional content and social media pushes, you also run the risk of incurring the wrath of an exploding sun should you try and peddle something that audiences simply don't like. We've even seen cases of social media crowds holding enough clout to change new media after its release, and you'd be a fool for thinking that video games have escaped without being admonished by the public for pissing them off. So let's all calmly and collectively come together and listen to some tales from old Father Gil, that's me, because I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video games that changed due to fan backlash. Number 8, Medal of Honor 2010. Honestly, you really don't need to know more other than the fact that this game let you play as the Taliban for a brief period of time to know why it was changed. But yes, for some reason, the rebooted 2010 Medal of Honor game decided to let players fight for the side of the Taliban in the multiplayer offering. The idea was that seeing as the game was trying to stay grounded in real-life events, that the enemies of the Navy SEALs and the US Marines should also be included with some relative accuracy. For obvious reasons, this caused a ton of controversy with fans who criticized the insensitivity of the faction's inclusion, especially when it came to this side winning a match, because it could basically be seen as glorification of a terrorist organization. EA's senior PR manager at the time made a further blunder when she stated, if someone's the cop, someone's gotta be the robber, someone's gotta be the pirate, and someone's gotta be the alien. In Medal of Honor multiplayer, someone's gotta be the Taliban. This was patched soon after the controversy arose, and the terrorists were then referred to as an opposing force, similar to the way that Counter-Strike terrorists are not given any real word placement as well. Number 7, Fallout 3. It's actually quite mind-boggling when you think how Bethesda originally chose to end Fallout 3. For a franchise that has pretty much made its bread and butter from choices and thinking outside of the box scenarios, to have the player sacrifice themselves in the water purity area of the game felt like a slap in the bottle caps, especially seeing as you couldn't really know this playing through the game for the first time. Therefore, it was quite understandable why fans rallied against the game's ending and even highlighted how stupid it was to potentially have a super mutant or a robot in the team who are both immune to radiation tell you that, nah fam, I don't fancy the juice today. So Bethesda took all this information, thought about it, and then released it as a paid DLC. Okay, hell, it wasn't even the first DLC they released, coming third in the lineup. However, we have to accept that they did eventually address this issue by allowing your companions to hop into the nuclear hot tub in your place, as well as allow the story to continue with broken steel. Still though, at least they learned their lesson, right? What do you mean that they pulled the same stunt in New Vegas? Number 6, Final Fantasy XIV. You have to commend Square Enix for not simply admitting defeat when it came to their rather disastrous launch of their Final Fantasy XIV MMORPG. While many praised the game for what it was trying to do, many players lamented that everything felt bogged down by a terrible UI and a lot of performance issues. As sales and the core player base dwindled, the company could have just accepted that it was a misfire and moved on. However, what they did was actually pretty spectacular. Responding to the fan complaints, they shut down the servers entirely and went back to the drawing board. Then, in 2013, they rebooted the entire concept with Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. And honestly, this might well be one of the best examples of a developer really aiming to please its audience, no matter the cost. The performance of the game was improved dramatically, as was the streamlining of the actual gameplay, and the writing found within this game for quests and characters felt like a concerted effort to make the world feel lived in and bustling with personality, and we wouldn't have got any of this if fans hadn't taken the time to express their disappointment. Number 5. Portal. It seems strange to use the words Portal and fan backlash in the same sentence, as the original physics puzzler is widely regarded as one of the best brain-bending games out there on the market. However, this murmur from the public came not from the game itself, but rather for how its ending completely didn't work with the events of Portal 2. The start of the sequel has you once more confined within the labyrinthian layer of aperture science, but the ending to the original Portal had you destroy GLaDOS and see the world beyond the testing room. The game then faded to black, leaving the future bright, but anything but certain. Fans registered their worries when the sequel was announced, but Valve, being Valve, had a trick up its sleeve. Instead of just letting fans scream into the void, they went back to the original and patched the game so that now a party bot drags you back into Aperture Science, thus tying the tales together ever so neatly. It's a remarkably simple solution, but one that fans across the Portalverse absolutely loved. Now, if only our cries for Left 4 Dead 3 would be answered. God, imagine that. Number 4, No Man's Sky. I still find myself in a state of disbelief when I look at how far No Man's Sky has come. When this game dropped, I, alongside so many other would-be spacefarers, felt a systematic failure to launch had taken place. We'd been promised so much, worlds unlike anything we'd ever seen, incorporated multiplayer aspects, a deep and enriching narrative that would even make us question life itself. Yet that's not what we got. Much like your mum saying that she'll show me a good time and then proceeding to refuse to wear the Rich Hudson mask that I've made specially for this event, this wasn't the experience that many wanted. I don't like looking into those dead eyes, and also, yes, that is my sad one per list. Complaints were torrential, chastising the title for lying to the public and mis-selling them an experience that it could never actually provide. Well, that all changed over the course of several months of hard toil from Hello Games. Now, with the recent release of the Beyond update, No Man's Sky is finally able to stand on its own feet again. The multiplayer expansions alone have changed the feel of the game entirely, but that's nothing compared to the immersive and brilliantly implemented VR offering. This game went through hell, and some would say rightly so, but now it's a title worth revisiting more so than ever, and all thanks to fans demanding what they paid for. Number 3, Mass Effect 3. I have great sympathy for BioWare as of late. Anthem seems to have been a huge misstep for the developers, and one that was plagued by issues across its development thanks to a lot of meddling from EA. And before this, Mass Effect 3 was an almost impossible game for them to make. I say this because how exactly do you end such a universe-spanning space opera? How do you close down a narrative years in the making in a way that satisfies everyone? Well, BioWare clearly didn't know and weren't given enough time to find out thanks to pressures on release dates, as the original ending to Mass Effect 3 was something that would boil the very piss from your body. It all culminated in, what's your favourite colour? As fans demonised the closing act as lazy and meaningless, that their actions across the series effectively didn't matter. However, BioWare wanted to make things right, and so a while after the game release, they offered a free DLC which expanded on the endings and tried to make sense of some of those narrative loose threads. They didn't need to make this. The damage had, after all, already been done, but the commitment to appeasing fans was a solid turn. True, if they wanted to please us further, then they should have included more allusions to the indoctrination theory, but still, you can't have everything, it seems. Number 2, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It was a strange sight to look at Assassin's Creed Odyssey for the first time, as this was the series effectively taking the last shreds of realism that it carried and shelving them completely. This was as fantastical and over-the-top a title as you could expect, and many were worried that it simply would feel like a shallow imitator to The Crown. But while the game did have its flaws, it was still received well by critics and fans. Well, that was apart from one quite huge oversight. In the DLC pack Legacy of the First Blade Shadow Heritage, you are effectively forced into a heterosexual relationship at the end because of a decision by Ubisoft to showcase you with your child. The decision was made to try and show how the actions of the player impacted the bloodline of the assassins, but this caused issues for anyone who chose to either ignore the romance options or play the game as a gay protagonist. It's not like the choices weren't in the game either, with options being presented to the player often and frequently. Therefore, to combat the backlash, Ubisoft tweaked the ending to include a line that explains why the choice to have a child was made, and removed the romantic closing shot at the end. Many said it wasn't as much change as one could have hoped, but it's good that an effort was still made to try and fix this issue. And number 1, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Sometimes taking feedback on your work can be hard. For example, Josh cries when I don't give him a big shiny gold star for each of his scripts. I mean, they can't all go on the fridge, mate. Still, there are 2 ways to deal with these moments. Either you bury your head in the sand, as so many companies tend to do, or, as is the case with Bloodstained Ritual of the night, you show the world that you've actually listened. When trailers for the Ritual of the Night edition dropped, fans were quick to comment that the game's visuals weren't really up to scratch, and even went so far as to state that the game's protagonist looked half asleep. Enter Koji Igarashi, who was the game's writer and lead creative input. This man right here is a legend because he took this criticism and made it into a selling point. Releasing a trailer in June of this year, all of the negative comments appear to flood the screen at once. Then the camera cuts to Igarashi drinking some wine or blood before stating that he's gonna fix it. And to his credit, he did, revamping the game's art style, changing some of the game's character designs, and providing a huge level of polish. Igarashi and his team worked tirelessly to create a game that he and the fans could be proud of. With positive reviews raining down for the game as a result, you have to admit, it was definitely worth it. And there we go, those were 8 times that video games were changed due to fan backlash. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends, and I hope that you go out and have a fantastic day, whatever you are getting up to, because you are a bloody legend. I know that, you should know that as well. Treat yourself as fairly as you possibly can. And if you're struggling with stuff, then remember you can reach out and speak to somebody. Sometimes it might seem very hard to do that, but if you can, making people aware of your situations definitely will help you in the long run. As always, I've been Jules, and go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. As always, you have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.